All right, so welcome to another video in the film series. This is a set of videos where I share some of my favorite films in different genres. So today I'm going to talk about my five favorite documentary films. And the first film in that collection is The Last Dance. It's directed by Jason Hehir, and it's a 10-part documentary about um, the Chicago Bulls and how. Um, They won six different NBA seasons. NBA is the National Basketball Association in the US. It's one of the biggest basketball leagues in the world, and this particular franchise in the early 1990s built a group of players that would eventually go on to win six championships. And what's fascinating about this is that it's really hard to win back to back championships, but they've won three championships back to back twice. So I think it really shows you. I mean, I had a lot of other sports documentaries to consider while I was making this list. There's the Man City documentary that I really enjoyed, and there's the All Blacks rugby documentary. These are both on the Prime Video series called All or Nothing. There's also Drive to Survive, which is the F1 series, but this would easily come out on top. I just think what's amazing about this documentary is the number of interviews and archival footage from the seasons, from post match sessions, from pre match sessions, and they really give you a portrait of the five or six main characters like Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, and the coach Phil Jackson. And some of the episodes are actually focused on these individual players. So you are invested in these players, and then you're invested in them winning the season as well. And yeah, I highly rate this sports documentary, and it really got me excited about basketball. And I still am a big fan of the sport, and I really enjoy watching it today, largely because I saw this particular documentary. The next documentary I'd like to talk about is called Icarus. It was made in 2017, and it's directed by Brian Fogel. And this documentary is basically an investigative journalism documentary, and there's this person interested in sports, Brian Fogel, and he gets in touch with a Russian scientist, Dr. Grigory Rodchenkov, and they basically investigate a state-sponsored doping program that made a lot of athletes win Olympic medals. And once it was investigated, they found out that a lot of these athletes would engage in doping programs that made them stronger and more efficient than other athletes. So it was slightly unfair, and it sent a shock across the sports world. But just the way and the nature of the storytelling in this documentary, I think it's one of the best I've ever seen. Um, yeah, and I think it won a lot of awards, but it's one of my most highly recommended documentaries. Searching for Sugarman is directed by Malik Bendejalul, and this is a documentary that won the Best Documentary Award at the 85th Academy Awards, the Oscar Awards. That's something I often do. If I want to find good documentaries, I actually go and look at the award winners or a list of nominated films in different film festivals around the world, like the Berlin Film Festival or the Mumbai Film Festival or the Cannes Film Festival or the Oscar Awards. And I get some good recommendations. And this is how I came across this documentary. So there was a 1970s musician, Rodriguez, who was not very popular in the US, but he became really popular in a few other countries. In one of the countries he became really popular in was South Africa. A lot of people admired and loved his music there. So these two South Africans decided to leave their country and go back to the US to find out what happened to this man because his music didn't really, take off in his home country. So what did he end up doing once his music didn't work out? And he was a superstar in another country and he didn't even know about it. So in that sense, it's really a portrait of the life of an artist that didn't really make it, which is often the life of many artists, unfortunately. But it's also a beautiful story about redemption and second chances um, when you lose out on a lot in life. All right, so this was a documentary made in 2009. It's directed by Don Argot. Now, Dr. Albert Barnes is this private art collector. He has thousands of paintings that he privately bought and collected, and he set up a foundation outside the city of Philadelphia where he used to house this art. Unfortunately, once he passed away, the city of Philadelphia realized that this art collection had more clout and power than the local museum. So, a lot of people would go outside the city to visit this collection and not spend a lot of time inside the city. So, because of which, it just speaks about how, like endowment funds work really closely to make sure the control. It's just an interesting documentary about how the private art collection of one individual was taken and made public without his permission. And if you're interested in the art world and the value of paintings and how people acquire and use art, I think this is one of the best um, documentaries that I'd recommend about art. And you can also look up the Barnes Foundation collection online. It's one of my favorite documentaries on the art world, and it also teaches you about how art is valued and why a particular painting is worth so much money. And the final documentary in my list is called Man on Wire. It came out in 2008 and it's directed by James Marsh. And there's this person, Philippe Petit, who decides to put a tightrope across the New York's World Trade Center Twin Towers, and he walks across this tightrope without any harness or protection. And I think this movie is about how he eventually does that activity. So, I mean, for someone to do something like this without getting into a lot of trouble, that is just amazing. So, I think this documentary really shows you the daredevil attitude of Philippe Petit and how he pulled off maybe the artistic crime of the century. So, Man on Wire, for sure, one of my favorite documentaries. So, these are my five documentaries. I'll link the trailer in the show notes. Thanks again for watching this series in my film project in the Learning Lab. And please subscribe to this channel for more such videos and recommendations. It really, really means and makes a lot of difference to me and the amount of hours I put in to make these videos for you. Thank you so much.